Hello and welcome to the PocketGamer.biz podcast week in mobile games, where we discuss the week's news and provide some insights. We're back for starters. For regular listeners, we've had a few weeks off. Anyone new? I'm Craig Chapple, head of content at PocketGamer.biz, and with me, as always, is our news editor Aaron Astle. How you doing, Aaron? How's the past few weeks? You been on holiday?
Yeah. It's been a while since we've recorded. So I was away in the Peak District the other week, which was nice to get away. Stayed in a lodge in the woods somewhere. Which was a nice time. And Nintendo even treated me with the Nintendo Direct while I was there, which was like over an hour long.
You're out in the wilderness. You don't have access.
Yeah, I was out when it happened. Fortunately, the lodge had Wi-Fi, but someone messaged me because I was out when it actually happened. I usually try and watch them live, but I was on holiday. Had to kind of prioritise doing the holiday stuff. But yeah, someone messaged me saying like, well, guess you're gonna have to get a Switch 2 now. So then I was like, well, what have they announced? I don't want to just look it up and spoil it. I've got to watch the whole presentation, and then. There were some cool games in there, but I was thinking the whole way through, it's like, none of these are really like the game I've got to get the Switch 2 for. And then literally like the last thing was the next main series, Fire Emblem, which I think that franchise will be coming up again later in the podcast, just to give a little tease. Yeah. But no, it's been a nice couple of weeks, feel a bit recharged. Nice. And I'm getting over a cold at the minute if my voice sounds a bit weird, but...
Everyone in the UK is currently struck down with some sort of bug, I've noticed. It's typical, weather's getting cold. That's why I got my hoodie on. But we're not allowed to turn the heating off until the clocks change, which is like a month away. But yeah, everyone gets ill around this time of year, so that's fun. As for myself, been a bit busy past few weeks. I haven't been able to put the show on. Asked me about it over a beer at Helsinki. But in other stuff, I've been playing Silksong, which is excellent. A very, very good game. A very long time in the making, that one. And it's worth the wait, for sure. It's just really slick gameplay. The world's pretty cool. If there's a story, I have literally no idea what is happening in it. Although I do joke to my friend, mostly to annoy him. Hello, Alex, who writes for PC Games Design. That the Hollow Knight never had a story. And I've legit forgotten anything. I've forgotten most things that happened in that game, which is, I have a rubbish memory, as I'm sure you know. But it's like I've never played the game. I'm just like, I don't remember that. Those bosses? I literally don't remember a single thing. It's really strange because Hollow Knight was very good.
I've actually really never played Hollow Knight, so I ought to. It's somewhere on the list. It just doesn't ever quite make it to the top of the list.
It's very good. Silksong, I guess its criticism is it's extremely difficult, but maybe it's kind of made also for the people that played the first one, so you don't want people just breezing through it either. But there's some the bosses are great, and I think the best ones are actually the ones that you go in, you die immediately. How am I ever going to do this? And then I guess it's kind of that Dark Souls-y thing of, okay, you just learn their attack patterns, and then by the end of it, it's an exceptional boss fight. So they do that. And obviously I've been playing more StarCraft. I think I finally got better again, so after getting rubbish. And actually, an interesting thing to note, so for me, so in the StarCraft 2 community, people are a bit confused and excited. It's a 15-year-old game, and to balance it, they actually had a balance council, which I believe was made up of professional players. I don't think they were really named, but some people kind of hinted that they were in it. And so each year, I don't know, 8 months to 12 months, there'd be like a big patch that would make balance changes to the game. Because, I guess in the meta, especially professional players, but even at lower levels, you kind of find certain units and ways of playing became kind of too strong, or changes that they previously made in a patch that were barely tested, really, kind of come in and then actually, nothing ruined the game. But there was one thing in particular in the last one, for one of the factions, that, I don't know, I wouldn't call it broken. But anyway, so what's really happened, the weird thing that's happened now is they've actually, I don't know how long they've been doing that, I believe they've got rid of this balance council, and someone or a team at Blizzard is actually kind of maybe working on the game again. And so they randomly released this patch, a bunch of changes to test out on a server before it gets rolled out, which is quite normal. But there's no explanation of what they're going for. It's just, these are the changes. So how a unit works, how that particular move works, it's all different. The spell, casting, whatever, is all different. And then, the most surprising thing was that, 2 days later, they changed that again. So it was like rapid fire testing, and I believe someone suggested that it was kind of like Warcraft 3, where actually to do balance changes, they just really rapid fire test, like maybe like every few days, really like, okay, see if this works. So you can try like kind of crazy stuff to see if it's fun. And if it's fun but too powerful, you roll it back a bit and you can balance, you do it quickly, testing, and then you can put it in, kind of implement it into the full game. I thought that was really interesting. One, as a way of the different ways of balance testing in games, which this is how I'm making it relevant to mobile. Different ways of balance testing. And then also, the thing, I have a conspiracy theory. And so this is ridiculous. This is no basis, probably in truth. But like, I'm wondering if there's AI involved in these updates. So they made in the second update, but in the first one, in the first one, they made these changes, but they got like the names of some of the like spells and units incorrect. They don't even, it's not how they're mentioned in the game, which you could say that's nitpicking, but this is on the official Blizzard like news from the team. Like they made up these terms in the first place. It's a bit weird they got them wrong, and they don't fix them in the second update either. And then they had a load of, which they haven't done for a long time, like quality of life changes, bug fixes. They didn't even fix like a well-known bug before the World Cup. And I wonder if AI was used to look through forums and maybe what professionals are saying, and then releasing a patch that was like identified those. So the team works on what they think the community has been talking about the most. And so I'm wondering if then an AI has then generated the patch notes. And that's how it's kind of hallucinated these incorrect terms. I thought it was because it was just really strange that the team's suddenly back on it after 15 years, and there's kind of no reason for them to, if they're not going to do it for the past 5 years. Curious. So anyway, conspiracy theory, but I thought it was quite interesting. I'll do the journalist thing and ask them. But I don't think I'll get a response. Right, so we'll get into the actual news of the week. And as always, a few shout outs before we do that. Our events coming up. We've got Pocket Gamer Connects Helsinki very soon, October 7th to 8th. I'll be there. Unless some catastrophe hits, I missed 2 events this year because of things that I got very ill for London. Unfortunately, for those that have seen him on camera, my little gizmo was my cat. He did pass away. And that was the day I was supposed to be flying to Shanghai, so I cancelled that, obviously.
Yeah, sorry again.
Thank you. So that's TMI. So other events that we've got coming up, we've got Pocket Gamer Connects Summit Korea, October 31st. We've got Akaba event coming up, November 8th and 9th. And then the big one, PGC London, January 19th to 20th. And also we have the top 50 being announced in Helsinki. That has gone to press. And I was very upset that a company announced a massive game after it went to press, but there you go, what can you do? Such is life. Classic, that is classic print journalism. And we have some top 30s in the works for top 30 MENA. I think we've pretty much narrowed down that list to top 30 Southeast Asia, and they'll be coming out over the next month or so. So lots of stuff going on. Right, on to the important stuff, the news. So there's a few things I wanted to talk about that have been in the news recently. The thing I wanted to start with is the Fortnite changes recently. So in Fortnite, you can now sell in-game items directly from your created partners, which is great. There's more ways for creators to make money on the platform. So from December 2025 through to the end of 2026, developers will earn 100% of the V-Bucks value for sales made, which in practical terms equates to around 74% of retail spending. However, from 2027, the rates offered by Epic Games are set to return to 37%. That's the actual money you make. I think they used something else. It was 50% or something. Interestingly, when they made this announcement, they were like, that's higher than Roblox's 25%, by the way. So they're making like a big move. They're really, again, sort of doubling down as they have been for a long time. You see UAFN, and UGC is the big kind of buzzword. If you look at Roblox, if you were to judge things by share price, it's gone up and up and up, despite, the, what they call the short sellers gunning for it. And it's actually just been banned in Q8. And it's having problems with kind of child safety still, even though they've made a lot of attempts to try to appease regulators and parents, more importantly. UGC is kind of a big place. And obviously you've got Grow a Garden. That's kind of been an absolute smash hit. kind of a positive story for Roblox that's really put it in the spotlight, like BBC headlines for that. I know you've got Steal a Brain Rot, which is crazy as well. And it's like tens of millions of concurrent users, so really propelling that platform very high. I think the other thing Epic said was it was going to have like sponsored placements. That's it. A sponsored row that allows creators to bid for prominent placements, aiming to help creators grow their audiences. I want to just roll back. These changes are good. This is a good thing, like a lot of this stuff. But you've got Epic Games that has been on this crusade against Apple and Google about the 70-30% split, right? And I think there'd be a wide consensus that that's been good for the industry, steadily opening it up, and then you've had regulators and those legal battles currently really opening them up, reducing the revenue share, which is fantastic for developers, right? And you can argue that Apple and Google don't do enough to earn 30%. We'll go into that again later. 74% is 4% higher than people were getting from mobile, right? From the mobile stores. So that's not loads more, right? And then it's going to reduce to 37% of in-game sales. You will still get a payout from the pool of engagement, so you can still earn money that way. But they're also charging you to promote your game, which is something that the App Store and Google Play do, which is not something, say, Steam does for discovery. So the money that you earn potentially goes back in. And I know that the big difference here, right, is that Roblox, which takes 25%, they're going to raise it. I was a bit confused. They're going to raise it by 8.5%. I didn't know if that was 8.5% of the 25% of revenue or an extra 8.5% of the 100. I suspect it's the former. I don't know. Like, these revenue shares are rubbish. They are awful for developers. You're making way less than half. Well, in one case, you lose 75% of your earnings. Maybe it will change for Roblox with platform fees, but I'm not sure. I just think that's kind of wild. And yeah, I was just saying, anyway, like Epic's doing this big crusade about, they take too much, we'll charge 11% or nothing if you use your own payment provider on the Epic Games Store. But in UEFN, you just earn like kind of a pittance for your work. They obviously provide the engine and a big audience, but Apple could say, well, we provide a big audience, which it does. You just can't access it very easily. So I'm wondering if that would be that. I feel like down the line, that is going to be a big contentious issue, especially when it's with Epic, it's kind of going the other way, right? So they're enticing you in with a 74% and then reducing it for some reason to 37%. I know these people run a business. They've got to make money. I'm not saying, they shouldn't take anything. But it does feel a bit like if you're going to complain about this, you can't then give developers 37%. It seems wild to me. That's my thoughts on that. There's one to watch. So, Aaron, you got a big story that was just a bit random. And I think I swear we talked about this a couple of months ago. The Nintendo in financials was just like, we will never. Oh, yeah, we're looking at this. And I was like, nah, no, you're not.
Yeah.
And then, what's the news?
Well,
what's the big story?
So suddenly Nintendo have shadow dropped their first new mobile game since 2019.
So since Mario Kart Tour, right?
Yeah, so it's Fire Emblem Shadows, which has been shadow dropped. And yeah, so it's also surprising that, like, of all franchises, like Fire Emblem now has 2 mobile games. I'm a very big Fire Emblem fan, but I never thought we'd get another Fire Emblem mobile game. It seems a bit too niche, but
it's weird that you would say that, and it's like a $1 billion game.
Yeah, I suppose.
And everyone was just like, well, we're never going to see that again.
Yeah, it's very different to Heroes, because that, like Heroes is a gotcha, basically like a scaled down version of the main series with turn-based combat on a grid, whereas this is like a real-time strategy game where the characters sort of move on the grid automatically to attack things, and then, because I've been playing a little bit of it, I got through the kind of tutorial section during lunch, which was a bit long. Yeah, like the characters move automatically, so it's still grid-based, but you can like choose moves to kind of fire at different places, at different tiles, but then an enemy might have moved off the tile by the time the move goes off and things. So it's very different to the main series. And then it's also kind of like riffing on Among Us and its inspirations, like Werewolf. Because so in each battle, someone on your team is basically secretly working against you and secretly dealing damage to your allies, because it's like an online multiplayer game as well. So then after each battle, you have to basically try and figure out who on your team is the bad guy who's helping the enemies. So far, it doesn't seem like there's massive consequences either way. If you guess correctly, you basically get an extra life for the next round. And if so you can basically get knocked out twice instead of once if you guess correctly without getting like a game over. So maybe at like high level play as you get further in, that will be a big deal. But currently, it's not like you guess correctly and that other player gets knocked out or anything. And it's also a little bit weird because it's Fire Emblem, but everyone has like an animal form, which like there have been a few like fantasy races where you'll get like one character per game that turns into a dragon or like a giant fox in one that was quite like Japanese inspired. But yeah, like every character in this has like a kind of beast form. So if they get exposed as being like the bad one, yeah, they suddenly transform. And some of the designs are very just like wacky for Fire Emblem. Not necessarily in a bad way, it's just very strange, particularly because there are some like returning characters. And so one of them, who was very popular from the main series, called Lynn, like in Fire Emblem Heroes, she's very often depicted as a like cavalry unit. So she has a bow and arrow, she rides a horse so she can move a lot. In this game, if you're kind of playing as her and you're the villain who gets exposed, her like beast form is that she's a centaur, which kind of makes sense, but it's also like, it's just weird seeing this character who's been around for like 20 years with like official artwork where they've turned her into a centaur. And then, so yeah, after kind of realizing that's the kind of gimmick, I suppose, I've noticed that like every character's human form also has little hints of what they're gonna like turn into. The main character, his hair, part of his hair looks kind of like dog ears. And so it just, the more I've sort of looked at it, the more it just feels like this isn't a Fire Emblem game. I'm going to give it more of a go because I am a big Fire Emblem fan. And it does feel, it's not quite like they've just made a game and plonked the Fire Emblem IP on it, because there is this kind of tile-based element. It does feel like they've adapted. You know, this is kind of what it would be if it wasn't turn-based, if it were a real-time series. But yeah, it's just kind of bizarre. I think there's only 2 characters so far who are kind of legacy characters coming back. And like the other one, so he's from Fire Emblem Three Houses, and his sigil is like a lion. So obviously he now actually turns into like an anthropomorphic lion.
So we're going to move on to some other news recently in the past few weeks. Apple Games has now debuted in iOS 26. We talked about this previously. The stated aim is to provide a single destination for all of the players' games and offer a specialized discovery space for new games, providing recommendations tailored to specific users. Social features include Play Together, a tab for tracking friends' activity, there's challenges, it's a leaderboards, and there's a dedicated kind of Apple Arcade app tab. It's just weird that it's just odd that they've just never really focused that much on games, and they're like, oh, here's this now. The timing feels a bit interesting. I'll go to that in a minute. And then at the same time, Google Play is just presumably it's just like, oh, Apple's doing, so we better do this. It's probably not how it works. They probably work on these things for a long time, but curious the timing. So Google Play has announced some changes and some kind of additions. There's new features like Play Game Sidekick to help users curate relevant information and access to Gemini, of course, during sessions. Basically, as we put in the story, Sidekick integrates Gemini Live screen sharing to provide real-time in-game guidance with verbal tips and support to give players AI-powered coaching without leaving their game. So I guess Samsung did something like this. It might even be actually powered by Gemini, which is the same thing. So if you need help, instead of having to leave the app, you just get help in the game. I think that's what that is. We're far and far away. If anyone ever remembers, about 30 years ago, if if you ever got stuck on a game, you couldn't just go on the internet and look for it. So there will be a number in the manual, I think. You'd have to call it up, and I presume it was like a developer that you'd get through to, and they would probably look through this book or just know like how to get past this certain part of the game, and you just have this chat with a person. We've come a long way. Anyway, more important parts. We've got play games leagues, so you can compete for play points, engage the community, and bragging rights. First league will run from October 10th to 23rd in Subway Surfers. They've made improvements to the game detail pages to show events, updates, offers, and player progress. Also adding a Q&A feature next month for select markets. The U-tab is also a new personalized hub for rewards, subscriptions, recommendations, and updates with dedicated gamer profiles and tailored content across apps. That will roll out globally from October 1st, 2025. Google Play Games on PC is also moving out of beta to full release. It says our catalogue of over 200,000 titles available across mobile and PC. Sorry, our catalogue includes over 200,000 titles available across mobile and PC. So no matter how you play, there's a game for everyone, etc., etc. Yeah, curious that they will come at the same time. Feel like these changes have come about for two potential reasons. One, I wasn't going to say, maybe they just both decided to just improve the experiences of games on their platform because it was overdue. So that's plenty possible. My other theories are that obviously, and Apple kind of alludes to this, right, in recent proposed changes in the EU where they split, testing my memory now, is it service tiers? I can't remember. There's 2 tiers for revenue share. And they basically like piled, say, Apple Games was one of the things that they piled into their services that they would charge an extra fee for. This is more prescient for Apple Games really at this point, but is it so eventually they can be like, well, the revenue share that they take, it used to be just for payments, and now it's like whatever they decide, and one of those is Apple Games. And they've always treated games differently to other apps, which were allowed to skirt the rules for a while. And then there was reading apps. God, there's the whole history of weirdness. So I just wonder if this is a way eventually they can say in court to regulators, go, well, look, we actually provide all of these services. Maybe they have realised that developers are quite upset and they do need to win people back a bit. So helping discovery, which has long been a problem, and they'll never fix it because I think it's a very challenging thing to do. But they should at least try. And this could be an attempt to do that. And then the other thing, it got me thinking, but I don't think this is true either, is that maybe it's like now that there's actual competition potentially in the market. So in Europe and in the US, they have to allow for alternative marketplaces. And so now they're actually competing with other stores to like make a good experience for finding apps, playing games. So maybe that was a bit of a motivation for Apple and Google to be like, we need to sort our shit out. Otherwise, I'm going to either go to direct to consumer, or they're going to eventually go to other stores, which I find very unlikely. I think the challenge of another store being a success in the West is a significant one. At least in terms of if you're talking about being on some sort of parity with Apple and Google, like Samsung, Huawei, Amazon, none of them could do it. And then the last thing I'll say, we did an interview with the Skitch CEO. So this is one of the alternative marketplaces trying to edge in and find their niche and kind of appease games publishers to use their store and they're trying to add new things. Skitch is kind of cool in that the discovery system is kind of like Tinder. You can swipe to find your app. That was kind of the main gimmick of the app. And then now there's like the full Skitch store. There were some interesting things in the interview. If I remember, I'll put a link, but if not, please check it out on the site, our Skitch interview. The PR, obviously, marketing statement was, I asked a question about discovery because I previously looked at how Steam, Google Play, and the App Store do discovery. And the mobile stores very much lean to paid stuff. Obviously, Apple does the editorial things as well. So sometimes even the app you're searching for is, well, sometimes always the app you're searching for, if it's a good one, will probably have another app in the sponsored section, unless the developer has paid for its own name. And in some cases, it was like multiple apps before you even get to your Whereas Steam doesn't do promoted spots. It bases it all on recommendations based, and I guess an algorithm that's based on your tastes and also trending games regionally, locally to you, which is really interesting. Skitch's PR line then, after I asked this question, so they were prepared somehow. It was we want to be the Steam for mobile gaming, basically. Or I said, I guess it could be considered the Steam for mobile gaming, something like that. But the point of that was it's just a different way of doing discovery. They say they're not going to do like those promoted spots. So that was very curious. They're just going to do different ways of discovery. And they take a 15% revenue share, I believe. The point of all this is just that, yeah, there's a lot of competition going on. And I wonder if that plays a bit of a part in Apple and Google paying a bit more attention. And then that's kind of the benefit of actual competition in a market versus monopolies that don't actually have to do anything. Those are my thoughts on that. Aaron, you've got a really, really great interview on a very serious topic.
Yeah. So, yeah, I recently spoke with Oxiwyle, which is a Ukrainian mobile game studio. And so I spoke with its founder, he Sperner. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. And so, yeah, we basically talked about what it's like developing and maintaining mobile games during a time of crisis, obviously with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And yeah, so it was a really insightful interview, quite inspiring really, that they've carried on through, getting, bombed with like air raids, team members going off to join the army. So yeah, I'll preface by saying like definitely check the full interview out on the website. But yeah, it was. I think it's quite a moving interview, to be honest. So Serhiy had said like nearly every night, Ukrainian cities are attacked by dozens or even hundreds of drones, and then during the day you're expected to be productive. And so he talked about kind of his role as a leader when team members, their family members might lose lives, or or the team members might be having blackouts and unable to get online, and then just basically talking about the development process around that, like people trying to get things in before deadlines because they're expected to lose power by the deadline, or working from like a garage, I think he said, or garage, because like it's safer during a raid. And then they've also moved like fully remote because where Oxiwyle was based is like very frequently bombed.
I think it's Odessa, was it?
Yeah, as you say, it's a very kind of serious interview, but I definitely think it's worth reading. I think it puts a lot in perspective, maybe both professionally and personally, particularly see if you're in the West, further west, like not to speak for everyone, but maybe your stresses at work aren't quite as bad as they could be compared to people going through this kind of thing. And yeah, the kinds of games that they make are kind of strategy games, kind of set in the real world. So you take control of kind of a country and lead its operations essentially. And so, like Serhiy talked about, initially he made a game called Ukraine Simulator, and then Ukraine Simulator 2, which was something of kind of an act of patriotism quite a few years ago after the annexation of Crimea. And he said that he wanted to make a game where players could kind of push back, at least in a virtual world. And then, yeah, over time they've kind of made bigger games where you can kind of control, you choose a country to lead, basically. And yeah, they're continuing to make new games. Modern Age 2 is kind of being adapted for PC now as well, so they're kind of even expanding platforms even with all of this going on. And yeah, it's just quite a humbling interview, really.
Yeah, it's, thank you very much for doing the interview with us. And it's very hard to imagine what they're going through. Obviously, we see it all the time in the news, just constant attacks, as they mentioned. There's quotes like nearly every night, Ukrainian cities are attacked by dozens or even hundreds of drones. And then during the day, as you said, Aaron, and then during the day, you're expected to be productive. And I think the quote we had in the headline was, "It's hard to focus on creative tasks when your city is under attack." And yet, these people, with the risk of with the possibility of being mobilized into the army as well, whether that's yourself, your friends, your family, your colleagues, just I can't imagine those conditions. And then you turn out every day and make games to kind of make people around the world also happy, right? Imagine it's just like those conditions and the stark contrast of like the lives that they're being forced to lead, and then what they're doing with their time is really inspirational. It's really really fascinating interview, and exactly what they do to kind of make it work. And their games sounds like they're doing pretty well. 40 million downloads. So good luck to that studio, and appreciate them taking the time to speak with us and shine a bit of a light on what's going on. Right, so that brings us to the end of the PocketGamer.biz podcast, Week in Mobile Games. Thanks very much, Aaron, for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be back.
It was very good to be back. Hopefully we'll be back next week. I don't want to make a promise now, but we'll attempt to get this back to regular. And anyone going to Pocket Gamer Connect Helsinki, give me a shout. I will be there. That is on the 7th to 8th of October. So not long at all. About a week or so. A week and a half when you listen to this podcast. Right. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you all very soon. Goodbye.